I'm fired up and I'm ready to go. I'm fired up and I'm ready to go. I'm fired up and I'm ready to go. This is the Billionaire Brown experience. Let's go.
All right, hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Billionaire Brown here with a second-time guest, man. This time's gonna be a little bit different because Mr. Do It All Do Kelly, or is it Dupree Kelly or Dupre Kelly? Which one is it?
It's Dupre Kelly.
All right, Dupre Kelly. All right. So I'm gonna just start firing away some questions. And then we'll go from there. I guess the first question would be, what made you decide to run for office?
It was several different things that finally made me make a choice to, choose a decision to run for office. And one of them was just being in the hip hop culture, man. There was a lot of different influences, in my life, just with dealing with business, dealing with different people from all over the country, from all over different countries, all over the world, and seeing some of the things that were happening community-wise within neighborhoods and in different cities, different countries, and coming back to my city and wanted to be part of the change that I wanted to see happen in my city. And another thing was, a 20-year-old me had a conversation with Tupac Shakur, or 21-year-old Tupac Shakur at the time, and we were in Florida on tour. Lords of the Underground, Patra, Tupac, and Outkast. That was the tour back then. And Tupac and Lords of the Underground, Tupac and the Outlaws, and and Thug Life and Lords of the Underground used to share a van together. And a part of my party was being late on, not me, but somebody in my party was being late every day on when we shared a van with Pac. So Pac started talking in third person, just I felt like he was disrespecting Newark, cause he was talking in third person to the Thug Life dudes, this my tour, people making me late, this my money, they'll find themselves out of here, and and I just felt like it was disrespectful because none of my crew was saying anything. So I started talking in third person, like people who act like they from the West Coast when they really from the East Coast. And, we kind of almost got into, we almost kind of got into a fight, And nevertheless, it calmed down. Our people got on the van. We went to the arena. We did our show. We came back. And when we came back, maybe a half hour, 20 minutes later, I get a knock on my hotel room door. Well, it was motels then because it was outside. But I get a knock on my door, and I look out the curtain, it's Pop, and he got his hands full, his arms full. He's carrying a bag and something. So I immediately called DJ Lord Jazz, my DJ, and tell him, yo, Pac at the door, because he was in the van when we were getting into the little argument. And he's like, yo, you want me to come up there? I'm like, nah, he's by himself. But I'm just letting you know, just in case anything else arises, you know what's going on. And so Pac, I open the door, Pac look at me, and he's like, you ain't gonna let me in? All right, I moved out the way. He came in, he sat on the bed. He had a 40-ounce of beer. He had a Newport behind his ear. He threw me a 40-ounce. He had a T-shirt that had Thug Life on it. He gave me that. He lit up his Newport, cracked his beer open, and he looked at me and said, you know you was wrong, right? and the crazy thing is, he was right. He was right. I just didn't feel like, I didn't feel like the way he was talking, it was making us look crazy, so I had to stick up and say something, or I felt like the Thug Life crew would have thought we was punks or something. And when we did that, just to fast forward, when we did that, we started getting into a conversation about how hip-hoppers and MCs need to become more popular in their communities so that they can, in the entertainment business, so they can come back to their communities and generate and start and initiate different youth programs and put more money into our youth in the communities and things of this nature. Now, we're 21 and he's talking like this. And he was saying, you know, and just to fast forward a little more, he said, and then we might have to do something we don't want to do. And I was like, what's that? He said, we might have to become elected officials because that's the only true way that we'll be able to effectively make change with ordinances and laws and codes and different things like that. He said, you have to do it in Newark. I have to go to Oakland and do it, and Ice Cube had to do it in LA. And, you know, he was just naming rappers who were hot at the time and saying that we need to get more popular so we can all do it. And I just thought, I'm like, wow, as I started reflecting back on that time, making the decision to run, I said to myself, I did everything that we said in that conversation, from starting a nonprofit, from putting my business smack dab in the middle of my city, to all of that, to being the change that I wanted to see in my community by being the example, except run for office. And then another thing that kind of contributed to me running was being around the senator, being around freeholders, being around the councilman, being around the mayor, being around all the political powers that might be, the congressmen within our city, smoking cigars with them, being privy to hang out at some of the places that they hang out, having the opportunity to go to some fundraisers and just be in their presence and see their work. I realized that a lot of these guys, you know, just have the power, and some of them weren't really connecting with the people anymore. It was almost like a long-handled spoon from your elected officials to the residents in the community, and I don't think it should ever be like that. And if it starts to get like that, then you start not to speak the language that the residents speak anymore. You start not to have a true understanding of what the residents are living through and going through and living in. So I just felt like that they were all hiring me to galvanize the community and the people in the residents in the neighborhood. They were utilizing me to put on festivals and to put on arts and cultural events and things that can bring the neighborhoods out. And I said to myself, you know, let me just get a seat at the table so we can have a voice, because we don't have a voice at the table. We don't have a voice. You know, hip hop is the pop culture now. And anytime you think about the pop culture of any society, it always has drove society forward, the pop culture. And if hip-hop has been the pop culture for about the last 18 to 20 years, and we don't have a seat at any political governing table around the country, anywhere in the world, period, then there's something wrong with that. If you utilize us to move society forward, but we don't have a seat a representative doesn't have a seat at the table, there's something wrong with that. Then things can get lost in translation. You know, instead of talking about our history, you start giving his story, you know. So you know, that's one of the reasons.
I want to pull you in to a debate I just had with my parents a couple days ago. And we have our differences.
No doubt.
You just talked about the electoral position and how we need to get some people in position. Would it be safe to say that did Donald Trump win? Hillary won with the popularity vote, which is, let's say, my vote and your vote, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And Donald Trump, although he lost the popular vote, he won the electoral vote. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I got 3 questions about this electoral college. This is what I'm trying to educate people on as well as educate myself. What is the electoral college?
The electoral college to me, it's just almost a barometer to keep politicians honest, or so they say. You know, and what I mean by that is the electoral college is, if you have a small city and we did not have an electoral college, that means that the politicians do not have to care about them or show care about them. They don't have to go to their cities because they don't seem as important. And when you deem something as not as important, you treat it as such. you don't treat it with all the care as you would treat the things that you think are more important, right? I mean, when you have something, you know, that's important in your life, you treat it you treat it differently than you do at something that's less important, right?
Absolutely.
So it's the same way with the Electoral College. The Electoral College was created to keep these politicians and these campaigns honest. So let's take it, if you have a small city, let's say that only has, or state that only has 300,000 people or 1 million people, then, excuse me, then a politician might say, without the Electoral College, might say, I'm not going there. Why waste the time and the money when it doesn't really matter? When nobody's really gonna, you know, it doesn't really matter to us. But when you give that same state, when you give them 15 electoral credits or 20 electoral credits as votes, now it matters, because when you give New York 10, but you give the small state 15 or 20, now you have to go to New York because, you know, all of the people are there, but now you have to go to this small city too because it has more electoral votes. You understand?
Absolutely. But how do you get into the Electoral College? Is it something that, like how do you get into the Electoral College?
Now that I do not know. I don't know how you get into the Electoral College. And I think that it needs to be examined. It needs to be explained to the regular people more, the voters, because I believe probably 90 or 85% of the people who vote, they don't understand what this Electoral College is. You know, we understand what it means, what I just said, but like you said, there's a lot of unanswered questions. How do you get in? Who is the Electoral College? How does a state get appointed more votes than another state? You know, so there's a lot of questions to be asked about Electoral College.
All right, and do you know who's in the Electoral College or no?
No, I don't know the committee that handles the Electoral College, but okay. I know that there is a committee, and they appoint the votes to different states who are smaller in size or less likely to get visited by our political people.
Okay, excellent. So I want to switch gears just for a second. I was online just streaming as much as I can, which I typically do with anything you're connected with. So I kind of just go in the Twitter search, or I go into the YouTube search or Google search, and I just search "Do It All, Do Kelly," and you know, I click on either articles or I click on, you know, videos, and I came across Redman, which is I know is a great friend of you. He was recently on the Angie Martinez show. Yeah. And also, if you're on Instagram, you need to follow Do It All, Do Kelly. You just type in, just search Do It All, Do, and we'll also put it in the notes here for you on iTunes. But Redman was on the Angie Martinez show, and he said that you personally, he was talking about you. He said you don't like where the money in Newark is going. And everybody, Do It All, Do Kelly is running for the Councilman of Newark. I actually have my campaign shirt on as we speak. It's super dope. Man. Thank you. And it said, all right, so he says that you don't like where the money is going in Newark. And he specifically said you want to get into office, and one of the things that you want to do is put some money into the education in Newark. What type of education are you talking about, and why is allocating more money in education so important to you once you win? Well,
first of all, Newark, New Jersey, for, I believe, and I might be a little wrong on the number, but I believe almost 20 years, I think maybe since 96, over 20 years, 96, Newark Board of Education was taken over control by the state of New Jersey. Usually a city handles its own Board of Education and its school system. So when that happened, when the state control happened in our city, a lot of things were cut. And when you talk about schools, and it's not just Newark schools, it's happened to a lot of our public schools when you talk about charter schools coming into any city like Newark, New Jersey. things like music and arts and culture classes get cut. And I just believe, man, from traveling the world and visiting different schools all around the world, it's so important to have the mind be able to focus on